Well, welcome back to the Resolve podcast, where we talk through biblical truths that help us become resolved to live well. I'm Logan. That's Josh. You know us by now. So in this segment, we're going to explore a practice that has been a cornerstone of our spiritual health and growth throughout all of history, and it's journaling. It's going to be a shorter one today, which will be still very beneficial to our lives. So journaling is more than just writing down your thoughts. It's a powerful tool that helps document the works and the ways of God in your life. Despite its modern connotations, it's been embraced by some of the most godly men in history. Charles Spurgeon, Jonathan Edwards, you mentioned George Whitefield, and these men who have left behind a rich legacy through extensive journals. Today we're going to discuss various methods and benefits of journaling and how it can help us gain clarity in our prayer, track your spiritual growth, and maintain other spiritual disciplines. So whether you're new to journaling or have been doing it for years, this conversation's for you. So grab your journal, pen, or hold on to your steering wheel tight as you're commuting, and let's dive into us. And we want to hear from you. If there's some feedback, if there are questions that you have, if there are things that you'd like for us to talk about on this podcast, we'd love to know that. So you can text us using the word PH-LIFE. It's all one word, PH-LIFE, to the number 77411. Want to hear what you're thinking, what you would like to talk about, and if we're missing some things. But anyway, that aside, let's go ahead and get started. Josh, let's talk about journaling.
Sounds good.
As we talk about journaling, how will you define journaling in the context of Christian faith? Why is it important?
Yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned the definition a little bit from Don Whitney. A journal is a place to document the works and ways of God in your life. And to think about that for just a moment, to document the works of God and the ways of God in your life. Now, that it doesn't have to be a rote documentation. It doesn't have to be like this, here's what God did today, here's this, and I think that's the first place to start with this, is sometimes with journaling, when you hear that, and I'm just going to make this delineation, especially if you're a guy, right? You hear that and you're like, seriously, you want me to keep a diary? Like, dear diary, today I felt like this. And that's not at all what we're talking about. And as Logan mentioned, you look at journaling historically, and actually both men and women have kept journals really for thousands of years. And we don't want to go back too much into the history, but you go back to even parchment paper and all of that in ancient times. Journaling has become really important throughout different seasons in history, and for whatever reason, in our season, it seems like it's become almost, it seemed to trend toward just a daily diary for a while, but then on top of that, then now when we live in such a digital world, we almost don't pick up pen and paper anymore.
Right.
And there's something very valuable to picking up pen and paper and to begin writing the things that really God is doing in your heart and the ways He's working in your life.
I've heard it argued, and I'd love to get your reaction on this.
Yeah.
I've heard it argued that millennials and Gen Z use Instagram or X or whatever platform as a means of journaling their life. They capture a picture, they write something about it, they write some things down, and that's their a version of journaling. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so and yes and no.
He's kind of a Luddite, so I'm asking him.
Here's what I think. Have you ever you may be too young for this, but have you ever gone to someone's house, like a grandparent's house, maybe, pick up the photo albums and start looking through them?
Yeah, my parents' house.
Yeah, so they have photo albums, right? Albums that are, you touch, you feel, you flip through, you look at those pictures and all of that. How many times have you actually gone to your hard drive that holds all of the pictures and you just start looking through them one at a time to reminisce about the pictures?
I mean, we'd look to pictures of my kids. I'd do that.
Sure, a few times. You might show them to your kids, right? Hey, remember this when this happened and all that stuff. It's a totally different experience when you're staring at a laptop screen or you're staring at your phone or what other device you may have. One, there's just something different in that. So I use that as an example. Journaling is similar in that, but I think even the purpose of journaling is totally different. So
I 100% agree. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, the purpose is not just to document, here's what I did in my life, which, by the way, can I say this too? Social media has changed the way we take pictures. So you don't take pictures anymore just to document, hey, what a beautiful place this is, what a cool thing. you're really taking a picture of you
In that context.
The picture's all about you, because you'll spend hours and hours on I don't even know what they're called, the filters and all that kind of stuff to make the picture look beautiful and perfect and all that. But it's not really about the picture, it's about the person.
Yeah.
So it becomes very self-absorbed. Journaling is not necessarily meant to be that way at all. So, by the way, journaling also helps you slow down. In a world where everything is fast-paced, where everything is multitasking, you can only journal and write one thing at a time. Like, you have to focus and actually use penmanship so that maybe somebody could read that journal one day if you want them to. But you have to write in such a way, and that's all you can do. You can't do other things at the same time. And it really focuses your heart and focuses your mind to what you're doing right there.
So dig back in the brain of church history.
Yeah.
Because some journals that I mentioned it a minute ago, some journals that key men throughout Christian history have written have changed the way that the church is today.
Yeah.
Can you think of a couple of those guys and like the impact that just their daily or their journaling had on the church?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of them. So you look at Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards was largely regarded as one of the greatest American geniuses who've ever lived. Even secular context, genius kind of people, scientists, all of that will look at the life of Jonathan Edwards and his journal entries about observations about the natural world and all of that. And it's astounding to see what he knew, what he believed in, all of that. But he was solidly a believer, solidly a pastor Christian who, in his journals, to this day, there are guys that I know who are pastors who read his resolutions of life and try to kind of imitate those resolutions and how they would lead their personal lives, because he was so thoughtful about it. He wrote over 10,000 journal entries. So you think about,
Golly.
how much he journaled and all of that. And the beauty of it is we have all of it. So we know what he was thinking. We know his wrestles through certain things. We know when the Great Awakening happened in the United States in the late 1700s, we know what he was thinking, or mid to late 1700s. We know what he was thinking through it, how he was shepherding through it. So I think now for a spiritual awakening, a revival potentially happening in different places. We've seen it in our modern context. How do you shepherd through that? Well, now you've got a journal of a guy who did and did so effectively.
Yeah.
And so I'm even reading a book right now of a guy named George Whitefield who not only journaled, but wrote lots of letters, and all of those things very intentionally written. And now we have this historical record of how he loved people well through those things.
You even take it outside of the church, like how much, like I like World War II stuff.
Yeah.
And how many of those men kept journals as they were going, and how much more historical context we have and understanding we have of those events because they kept journals, and we are able to see and read and kind of experience in ways what happened then that we would never have if they had not just written down their thoughts. And again, going back to the social media version of journaling versus true journaling, there are things that we will write down in a journal that are not, that we would never publicize.
Yeah.
Like there's a safety and an honesty of writing down our true heart there, versus online is such a facade. It's such a mask. It's what do people think of me? When this journal is, I just need this out.
Yeah. And I think there are different purposes of journals. Sometimes, like you mentioned, there's going to be, you're maybe writing them knowing that someone's going to read this one day. So I've written some of my journals that way, some I haven't. There are times I'll go back, and when I started probably the first really journaling and writing things, I was 13. So I've gone back to some of those, especially when I was 14 and 15, and read those and thought, wow, I was really immature. But at the same time, that's where it begins. And looking back and what's going through your heart. So there's that piece of it. There's also letters, which is an aspect of journaling. And you mentioned things from the past. I love the Civil War letters. Some that were written, they're beautifully penned, so thoughtfully written to their loved ones. And we have them today understanding what was going through their heart and mind. So a lot to that, a lot to journaling.
So practically, what are some methods of journaling? You mentioned it's more than just our writing down our emotions of the day. So what are things that we can write down in a journal to keep and work through.
Yeah. So, and I would say this, one more thing before I even get into that. Don't feel like you have to do a certain method of journaling for it to be journaling for you, if that
Sure.
makes sense. Some are more bullet point people. It's awesome. Some are more long form. For me, actually, a lot of my journals have started writing with fountain pen because it forces me.
You're so fancy.
Well, it forces me to slow down. It forces me to have to write the letters. I also don't want to lose cursive. I want to continue to keep up in my mind not only how to read it, but how to write it.
Did you take penmanship in school?
I did not. No,
okay.
but I did have to learn cursive. So
Nice.
Anyway, so writing those things out, the method that works for you. So here's some things, methods for it. One is writing your prayers. I think this is incredibly helpful because, again, you'll hear me say this like 900 times, slow down, right? It makes you think of every word that you're writing. And as you're writing this to your Father in heaven, there's an intentionality that you'll have when you're not just thinking and praying off the top of your head. So writing those prayers down, writing them for other people, and then giving yourself permission to look at it and go, is that really what I want to happen in their life? Am I praying for the right things for them? You can also write scriptures in that way, right? A scripture that stands out to you as you're reading in that. So our Abide thing that we're doing as a church, where you would point out, like pick out one of those passages or one of those verses or even just a phrase that the Lord really speaks to your heart, and you would write that down. So you can keep up with prayer requests and answered prayers. And that's more of a checklist type thing, but here's the things I'm praying for, and I think what's powerful is to go back and when God answers those, even if it's not the answer you'd hope for, you still write a little date.
Yep.
This is when I realized that prayer had been answered, right? Because it just shows that, once again, God hears us and responds. I mentioned this a moment ago, meaningful scriptures. So maybe you've got a note card. I know that those are those 3x5 things that, cards. That,
I don't know what you're talking
they're a
about.
little bit kind of card stock, heavier paper. But yeah, you can write down a scripture passage and have it with you, and just maybe you read it several times a day. That's a form of journaling in that regard. Going back to the definition Don Whitney gives, write out lessons God's teaching you. So what's God showing you right now? Where have you seen him move and work in your life? We talk about that as a staff every Tuesday when we circle up and pray. Why would we do that? Because it reminds us God's moving and working. So writing those things down. Key moments in your spiritual life, so record those. If there's something that happened, it could be massive, it could be small, but if it's a key moment in your spiritual life, record that. And then I would say preserving key moments for future generations.
That is another benefit as we talk about, and we focus here at Parkway Hills, the generational aspect of our faith. Journaling is very generational, to be able to pass those journals on and to read through and to get to know like your father or your grandfather or your mother or your grandmother's heart behind things.
Yeah.
It's special. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Even to see, like, if Barrett sees the prayers that I've written for him down in journaling.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Absolutely. And to think they're going to read those one day. And it's okay if it's not perfect. And it's okay if it's not.
It's better if it's not perfect.
Yeah, because they're going to be going through the same journey. So everyone's prayers start immaturely, right? Because we're just now walking in this journey in Christ. Yeah. So, yeah, it's good.
So just kind of close this out. What are some benefits of journaling, and how do we begin to do it?
Yeah, so we've talked about this a little bit, clarity in wording our prayers. You do, as you mentioned, you've created that written record of your spiritual growth. So you can go back years, as I've done, and say, oh yeah, I remember who I was then. Look what God's done in these past however many years, right? Maybe it's just a year ago, and look what God has done. By the way, growth that happens after a season of crisis. And here's what I mean by that. If you go through a really hard time, write those things down, and then look back 2 years later and go, wow, look what God has done since those moments. And those moments where you felt like, was he even listening? And then now you look back and go, man, God was so faithful through every bit of that.
Yep.
The other thing is, or last thing I'll mention, benefit, it helps maintain other spiritual disciplines. So it goes hand in hand with prayer. It goes hand in hand with fasting, with many other of those spiritual disciplines that just continue to help us in that journey with Christ.
Very cool. Well, as we finish up today, we always like to leave you with something to work on, and it's going to be a surprise this time. Go buy a journal.
There you go. And by the way, there's so many options out there.
Yeah, great options.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to go buy a pen.
There you go.
You may not even own a pen.
And fountain pens aren't all expensive. So
Yeah. You can get a nice Mont Blanc pen for a couple $100.
Yeah, I was thinking like 30. We're in a different bracket, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Go buy a nice pen. Go buy a nice journal. It will help encourage. In fact, one of my good friends, when we would work through some discipleship stuff, he would buy everybody in the group a beautiful leather-bound journal and stamp their initials into it. And it was always encouraging. It's just a tactile thing of picking that thing up, being able to write in it. And so go invest in your spiritual journey that way.
There you go.
Anyway, so that's journaling today. And if there's any way we can help, if there's any way that we can aid you in your spiritual walk, your spiritual journey, text us. Use the word PHHELP to 77411. We'd love to have a conversation with you. If you have any questions, same thing. Just text that word. We'd love to touch base with you. But we'll see you next time as we talk through, I think we'll talk through fasting next week. So
sounds good.
We'll see you then.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Our deepest desire is that you would know Jesus and walk with him daily. If you want to know more about what that might look like, you can text PHLife to 77411. If you'd like to know more about Parkway Hills, visit our website at parkwayhills.org. We'll see you next time on the Resolved Podcast.